Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Toyota Owners 400 at Richmond Raceway, aka the Action Track. This will be on Sunday, April 18th at around 3 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be our third time visiting a short flat track this year, so we have some extra data points to look at, which I do think will be very helpful for us NASCAR DFS players heading into the weekend. So that's something to look forward to, and I'm looking forward to this race, and I'm sure you guys are as well. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. My NASCAR DFS community does a fantastic job of interacting with my content, leaving likes, leaving comments, all that fun stuff. Helps push my video out to the YouTube world, so I do appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, get us close to 8,000 subscribers, and turn on the notification bell as well so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. If you don't follow me over on social media, I'm at Pennell16 on Twitter and CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon and get access to some extra content that I do put a lot of time into every single week, link is down below for that. You can join a community of several hundred NASCAR DFS players, and you can join the Discord community as well, where we always have a good time in there at any point of the day, at any day of the week, especially on race days. It gets pretty wild in there, but it's always a good time. I'll answer your questions and just talk shop, talk lineups, all of that good stuff, and share some useful information. Lots of good people in there, so if you just want a good time or some useful information, come in, join the Discord chat, because even if you don't want access to just my content, I do have a Discord-only option that you could choose just to hop in there and have a good time on race days or just hang out throughout the week. But you get access to a bunch of stuff. I have projections over there, which have taken down multiple tournaments so far this year and last season as well. Seems like we have guys finishing near the top 5, top 10 in some contests every single week, so I'm thinking they're doing pretty solid so far this year. Also, the big thing is I did add an optimizer recently. I did have you guys try it out as a beta run for the Bristol Dirt Race, and I opened it up officially last week for the Martinsville race, and it seemed to go pretty well. Got ownership projections, which have been pretty good so far, and you can use my own projections. They update automatically on there. You can build 150 lineups, set groups, all that fun stuff, export it to DraftKings. So if you want to try out my optimizer, that is included in the stuff down below, rankings and all this stuff on the data sheet, which has millions of tabs on there with useful information like previous optimal lineup data, green flag speed cheat sheets, which I think are very useful since we don't have practice these days, and obviously the Discord community as well. So if you're interested, link is down below. And if you want to try out Monkey Knife Fight and use some of this information over on their site, the parlay, and try to win 2x, 3x, 50x, 80x, 100x your money, use the link down below and use code CPEN to get a free money instant bonus up to $50 using code CPEN. But I think that's it for the shameless plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And before we get into the actual preview of this race, I do want to mention a couple of things before we get started. So the live stream schedule, it's a lot more simple now since I'm no longer with Osmo. It's just going to be on my channel. And I want to apologize for last week. I did have a live stream scheduled for Saturday at 5 p.m. And then I was like, well, the weather looks terrible. They're probably just going to push the race back. Thought we'd get that news pretty early. No, they knew rain was coming, but they still ran 40 laps. Maybe they just wanted to get the pre-race ceremony stuff out of the way, I guess. But I don't know, that really screwed things up because I wanted to do my live stream. So unfortunately, that sucked, and I do apologize for missing out on that because I know a lot of you guys look forward to that every single week, as do I. So I felt pretty bad about it. I know my girlfriend likes the live stream, so that kind of sucked. But we're 100% having it on Sunday on this channel that you're watching right now at 1 p.m. Eastern, because I got to do baseball stuff because baseball typically locks around 1 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. So I figured, okay, we'll just do the live stream at 1, and once baseball is over, then we have the race at 3. That gives me an hour afterwards in case we get news that guys go to the back. I can readjust lineups. I think that works out the best for me. So let's plan on 1 p.m. Eastern for the live stream. Be there or be square. And as always, if you guys want to join the DraftKings contest, all you have to do is comment your DK username down below. Say something nice, whatever you guys want to do. I don't care. But the first 100-some people that comment their DK username and accept their invite over on DraftKings, you can enter the contest that I host every single week. Just a fun way to interact with you guys, see what kind of lineups you're building, and compete against you guys. And you can win some money and get a free shout out on the channel as well, which I'm going to do right about now. So last week's winners we'll put on the screen right here. And coming in first place, taking home the gold medal and over $100 and the honor of just having first in the contest, we have CM Math, 33 with 362 points, had the dominator combo of Denny Hillman and Ryan Blinny, which is what you wanted last week if you wanted to take down some tournaments. Also had Christopher Bell, Eric Amarola, MDB, and Corey LaJoy. So congrats to CM Math, taking home the trophy this week and a decent chunk of money as well. Backing him up, Kaltenheimer, 341 points, coming in second place, who I do believe is pretty new to the channel, at least entering the contest. So shout out to you, had a hot start so far entering the contest. And once again, my dad, back-to-back podium weeks, so shout out to you, 338.55 points, just edging out fourth place by 0.5 points. So congrats to my dad once again, who seems to be on a hot streak right now. And Sin City Global, Will Banker, C. Davis, bunch of numbers, Matt Marhefke, I think that's how you say your name, Don Jorge, and then some stragglers at the end that rounds out your top 10. So shout out to you guys. You had fantastic weeks. Looking forward to see who can make the top 10 this week. So like I said, if you want to join the contest and compete with us every single week, just comment your DQs down below, and I'll be more than happy to send you an invite. And I think with that being said, that's enough for the housekeeping, so let's get into the preview of this race. As previously mentioned, this is the Toyota Owners 400 at Richmond Raceway, aka the action track. There's your outline of Richmond. This is a short flat track, and this will be the third time we visit one so far this year. We're using this short track aero package, which is high horsepower, low downforce, the 750 horsepower package, which I do think produces the better racing of the two packages, but it's 0.7 miles in length, 400 laps, and nearly 300 dominator points, 280 total maximum dominator points available, which means dominator points are once again going to be pretty important to our lineups. It's not quite 500 laps, but 400 laps is still a good chunk of laps. So we want dominators in our lineups. We're talking 2 to 3 per lineup. I would not make any one dominator builds. I don't think that's going to be optimal. Looking at the previous optimal lineups here at Richmond, we typically see 2 dominators, but you can stretch that to 3 as well. Like I was mentioning earlier, we have been to a couple of shorter flat tracks so far this year, Martinsville and Phoenix. The most comparable short flat tracks to Richmond, I think, in my opinion, are New Hampshire and Phoenix, because they're a little bit bigger and they compare more so towards Richmond. Martinsville, it's still a short flat track, so you can't compare numbers to it, but it races a little bit more unique compared to the others. But I think that's kind of it for the preview of this race. So without further ado, let's get into the driver by driver breakdown portion of this video. And if you want my overall thoughts for the pricing this week, I think DraftKings did a good job. They're no longer doing that thing where they price down the guys starting closer to the front. They've kind of gotten away from that the past couple of weeks, but the guys starting on the front row this week are both $11,000 or more, so completely gone with the guys starting up front being a little bit cheaper. Maybe a guy like Chase Elliott's a little bit too cheap below 10K, but you can't have everybody $10,000 or above, or it's going to get a little bit too difficult to build multi-dominator lineups. So I think DraftKings did an overall good job, so I'll give them a little bit of a round of applause here. But we'll start up top with Brad Keselowski. Massive price tag of $12,000. He's starting all the way back in 20th, though, so you get that place differential upside mixed with some dominator potential as well. And he won this race last year, and he won the New Hampshire race as well. And these Penske cars have been fantastic at these short flat tracks since last year. Easily the best team on this track type. So I have high expectations for guys like Brad Keselowski and Joey Legano in this race. Notice I did not mention Ryan Blaney, which you'll see why in a little bit, but he's not much of an exciting play for me this weekend. But anyway, Brad Keselowski, I think he's a fantastic play here if we take out the price point, because I do think he's going to be a contender to dominate at some point. Not early on, because starting all the way back in 20th, he's pretty much mid-pack, so he's going to have to work his way through the field, which can always have added concern. And he's definitely not going to lead any laps, I think, in Stage 1. I think he's going to be more of a Stage 2, Stage 3 kind of guy. So if you are rostering Brad Keselowski this week, I think you got to pair him up with a guy like Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hillman, or someone closer to the front, because Brad Keselowski is not going to pick up those early dominator points. And the assumption here is that we're going to have about 2 to 3 dominators. So if we're just playing Brad Keselowski, we're going to miss out on those early dominator points. So we're going to have to pair him up with someone closer to the front. And that price tag makes it a little bit tough, because if you want to roster him with someone closer to the front and you want the pole sitter or the guy starting next to the pole sitter, they're both around $11,000, which is going to make things a little bit tough. You're looking at around $23,000, $24,000 for just 2 drivers. So just something to think about here, but I do think Brad Keselowski is a very strong play. Now, would I play him in cash games? I'm not sure if I'm going to get there in cash this week, because that's a real big price tag. $12,000. That's a lot. I'm not even sure if he's going to lead laps. We can get guys with similar upside. I know they're starting closer to the front, but Truex, Hamlin, Legano, Kyle Larson, even Chase Elliott, they're a lot cheaper than Brad Keselowski, and I feel like they're more likely to lead laps as well. So as much as I want to say, yeah, let's play Brad Keselowski in cash because he's starting in mid-pack, you have the added upside as well, and he won this race last year, and they've been overall dominant at these short, flat tracks. It's just, that's a hefty price point for a guy I'm not so sure is going to lead a lot of laps. But he's been fantastic at Richmond. He won last year's race, 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s, some of the best overall numbers, some of the most laps led, some of the most fast laps. You guys get the idea. Keselowski is pretty good at Richmond and short, flat tracks in general. Past 15 races at these track types. Just, again, it's just some of the overall best numbers, the second most laps led, decent amount of fast laps. And since the start of last year, Team Penske has been fantastic at these short, flat tracks. And also going back to last year, we had our big 3 at the short, flat tracks, which there's Joey Legano, Brad Keselowski, and Chase Elliott. I know Keselowski hasn't had the greatest start to the year at these track types, but I think he's going to be fine. It's just getting up to that price point of $12,000 is certainly going to be a struggle. So I'm going to play him. I'm just not sure how much I'm going to have yet. I think that'll be a better question for me on the live stream once I figure out how lineups are going to look, because I haven't built any lineups yet. Yeah, I've played around with what the optimizer like so far, but I'll have to play around and see how much Keselowski I can get and feel good about it as well. Because the more Keselowski you add, it's going to take away from guys like Martin Truex and Denny Hillman in your lineups, who I think are way more likely to lead laps. So it's going to be a bit of a conundrum this week, but we'll figure it out. And it should be interesting to see what his ownership looks like. And then dropping down to the pole sitter, Martin Truex Jr., $11,400. He is starting on the pole. And I want to say to fade the pole sitter because, man, they just seem to suck every single week. Since the COVID started, the pole sitter just absolutely sucks with no practice and, no time on the track. It's kind of anyone's best guess who's going to dominate early on. The pole sitter just tends to get passed really early on. We saw that last week with Joey Logano. I was very confident in Joey Logano leading pretty much all of stage 1 last week. It did not happen. He got passed by Denny Hillman pretty quick, so that's a little bit concerning with Martin Truex Jr., but the couple things I will say, even with all that being said, it's going to be hard for me not to want to play Martin Truex Jr. this week. And I know I'm probably falling to the same trap that I do every single week where I say I don't want to play the pole sitter, but I do it anyway just because they're on the pole and they're in the easiest spot to dominate. But so far this year, I think Truex on the pole should be the least concerning guy that we have, maybe with Denny Hillman at a track like this, because at these short flat tracks so far, Martin Truex Jr. is 2 for 2, 100% at winning these races, and he's looked fantastic so far. And he's also fantastic at Richmond. He's averaging the most DraftKings points per race here, average running position of 3.7, the best drive rating, the most wins. We'll actually tie with Kyle Busch for the most wins the past 6 races, but 4 top 5s, 130 laps led per race. And looking at his recent finishes at Richmond, he's finished 2nd, 1st, 3rd, and then 14th in the 2018 spring race. But besides that 14th place finish, he has been absolutely phenomenal, great at the short flat tracks, the most wins the past 15 races at these track types with 6, the most laps led and the most fast laps. So I have nothing against Martin Truex Jr. here. He's 2nd in average green flag speed this season at these track types, and I think he's going to have a pretty strong day. I would not be surprised if he leads the most laps. I know we're falling back into the trap of playing the pole sitter, and he's certainly not at a discount either, but he's the favorite in Vegas for a reason. I can definitely buy in on Truex having a very fantastic day for fantasy purposes. I just hate the price point for the guy in the pole because there's a lot of downside there, because if he doesn't lead any laps, well, he's probably going to lead a couple laps. But if he gets past early on, doesn't see the lead once again, even like a 2nd or 3rd place finish without a ton of fast laps is not probably going to be optimal at that price point. So you got to be a little bit careful there, but I could see wanting to play him in cash this week just because I'm pretty confident in him leading the most laps. Like, if I had to pick who's going to lead the most laps in this race, I would probably say either Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hillman, or Kyle Larson as of right now. So I like Truex a lot. He checks every single box for me, just a little bit concerned that he is on the pole. Then Denny Hillman, $11,000. He is starting in 2nd. He's been fantastic at the short flat track so far this year. Looking at the loop data at these track types so far, you can see that he actually pops up the most for me. He's got the most laps led, the most fast laps, the best driver rating, the best average running position, the 2nd best average finish, and starting position doesn't really matter. But he's been fantastic, both him and Martin Truex, and they're both pretty much the best drivers so far this year at these track types are starting 1-2, so it does make it a little bit difficult for fantasy this week, and their price points don't make it very easy as well. But we know Denny Hillman, he's great at the short flat tracks. He's got 4 top 5 finishes here the past 6 races and some overall really strong numbers. So I would not be surprised if these guys can go back and forth for the majority of this race, share the fast laps and share the laps led, and you can easily play these guys together. I know a lot of people might shy away from that, but just because they're starting 1-2 doesn't mean they both can't dominate. We've seen instances before where the guys starting 1-2 can both dominate and put up pretty strong performances. Now, does it look the greatest on paper? Not really. Would I do it in cash games? Maybe not. Probably want to get a little bit more place differential upside in there with my dominators. Maybe a guy like Truex and Kyle Larson together. That might make me feel a little bit better, but I still think Denny Hillman's a fantastic play in all formats and one of the top best lead laps in this race. So I do like Denny Hillman in cash and GPP this week. Then dropping down to the 10K range, we have another Penske car here with Joey Logano. So I typically like the Penske cars at short flat tracks, so I do like Legano. I don't think a lot of people are going to play in this week because I do think a lot of people are going to go towards Kyle Larson, and they're going to pick between Denny Hillman and Martin Truex Jr. Then Keselowski is going to pick up a lot of ownership starting all the way back in 20th. Then we have Chase Elliott, who's a little bit too cheap. So Joey Logano might be that kind of guy that gets a little bit overlooked more than he should. Not saying he's going to go unknown. He's going to have some ownership, probably close to 20%, but I feel like it could be a little bit higher than that. So I'm definitely in on Joey Logano here in tournaments. Not sure I'd get there in cash games, but the price is pretty nice. And he was a contender last year in this race. He did finish 3rd. Did give Brad Keselowski a run for his money. I think it was in stage 3 for that race. But overall, pretty good at Richmond. 4 top 5 finishes the past 6 races here. And he was part of that big 3 last season that was super, super good at these short flat tracks. And looking at the 2020-21 numbers specifically, he's got 7 top 5 finishes. Just missed out last week. I think he finished 6th right behind Kyle Larson. So the top 5 streak finally ended for Joey Logano, but he's got the best average finish, the best running position, the best driver rating, the most laps led per race and almost the most fast laps as well. So I have no issues with Joey Logano. I think he's a fine play, and I do think he might go a little bit overlooked. So I'd not mind being overweight in tournaments on him this week. Not sure I'd really get there in cash games though. Potentially one of my favorite plays of the week, Kyle Larson at $10,300. He's starting in 6th, and he just has the fastest car out there every single week, it seems like. I know he didn't dominate last week, but he was really good. He started in mid-pack, so had to work his way through the field, but he was very fast, which is a little bit concerning. I feel like Keselowski could be in a similar situation last week where he has a good car. I'm just not sure if he's going to get up front and dominate, but Kyle Larson's got track position to work with this week, and we want to go all the way back to Phoenix. Kyle Larson had the best car in the field, but unfortunately, he kept having to go to the rear and driving his way through the field, which he did, I think, like 2 or 3 times, and he clearly had the best car. It's just when you have to keep driving through the field, it's kind of hard to dominate the race when you have to do that, but he was super fast in traffic, and Phoenix, good track for him. He performed very well. And Richmond, he's a previous winner here at Richmond. And now that he's in the 5 car instead of the 42 car, I have super high expectations for him. And the Hendrick cars have been super fast all season long. Bowman, Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott's kind of been lagging a little bit, it seems like, but he's still in a fast car. It just doesn't seem like he's getting the greatest finishes in the world, or really dominating, I should say, because he did finish 2nd last week, although it didn't feel like he finished 2nd for some reason. But he's had a fast car this year, just isn't really dominating, but that'll probably change some point soon. But Kyle Larson, gotta like him a lot here, and I think he's a fantastic play. I think you can play him in cash games, and I feel like he is too cheap. So I am all aboard the Kyle Larson train this week in any format. Just feel like his price is a little bit too low for the upside that he has each and every single week at any single track that we go to. And Kyle Busch, $10,000. He's starting in 10th. He's great at Richmond. The problem is in the COVID era, he just doesn't get up front and dominate these days, but his numbers are good. 4.5 average finish here, second only to Truex in average DraftKings points per race, 2 wins, which is tied with Truex, 3 top 5, second most laps led, and the second most fast laps. Did finish 6th here last year, and the price is low enough where he's starting 10th. I wouldn't mind taking a couple stabs at Kyle Busch, but if we want to look at the 2020 2021 numbers specifically at these track types, Kyle Busch is only averaging 26 DraftKings points per race, only 1 top 5 finish, 4 top 10s, and 1 lap led in 8 fast laps. So it's kind of hard to trust Kyle Busch because it's just, you have to show me it, because he's just not showing it any single week, and there's no practice to dial his car in. So once we see it, I'll be a little bit more confident in it, but Kyle Busch does not show that dominator upside that he typically has in previous years. So until we start to see it, it's just going to have to be a little bit lower on the field than Kyle Busch, which has been a strategy that I've been doing pretty much every single week until we actually see Kyle Busch go out there, dominate a race, which we've seen a couple times last year at a track like Bristol, and he won that Texas race, but Bristol's a pretty unique track, and he's just been so good there, so it's kind of hard to compare that. But I think Kyle Busch should have a decent race, should be a top 5 contender. It's just, I don't think he's going to go out there and dominate, because can you really imagine Kyle Busch dominating over a guy like Kyle Larson, Legano, Hillman, Truex, Keselowski? I just really can't. I think he can be a good finish guy, but we're going to need a little bit more out of that at $10,000. Then dropping down to this 9K range, we have Chase Elliott at $9,700. He's starting in 3rd, so he's in a good position to pick up some dominator points early on, and I'm really liking this price point of Chase Elliott. I do think this is going to lead to some pretty heavy ownership. He was fantastic at these track types last year. Did finish 5th here, and he does have 3 top 5 finishes the past 6 races. He's not typically a dominator at Richmond, but these Hendrick cars have been fantastic, and Chase Elliott's got one of the best cars in the field, and he's one of the best drivers as well. So I don't think Chase Elliott's out of the equation to dominate. Maybe he's not likely to dominate over a guy like Truex or Denny Hillman, who's shown the ability to do that here in the past, even though Denny Hillman's only averaging 8.5 laps led per race, which isn't too far off from Chase Elliott. But I still like Elliott quite a bit because of the price point. It's mainly a price thing, and you can easily fit him in as a 2nd dominator in your lineup, or even a 3rd one as well if you're going really top heavy. So Elliott, I do like him quite a bit just because of what he's shown us at short flat tracks in recent seasons. Kevin Harvick, $9,400. He's starting in 9th. Yeah, he's pretty good at Richmond. He was fine here last year. Had a penalty where he had to do a pass through, ended up going a lap down and had to unlap himself. He did finish strong. He did have a top 10 finish, but these Stewart-Haas racing cars have been absolute trash so far this year. Kevin Harvick is getting decent finishes, but he's not anywhere near the front dominating or anything like that. At $9,400, starting 9th, yeah, he could get a top 5 finish. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world at $9,400, but I feel like I'd rather get to a Chase Elliott, who I think is way more likely to dominate, and then maybe down to an Alex Bowman, Austin Cindric kind of guy who have place differential upside, but high finishing position potential as well. More so Alex Bowman than Austin Cindric. I think Austin Cindric's probably capped around the top 20 for the most part, but Kevin Harvick, until we see the Stewart-Haas racing cars actually perform up to expectations, it's hard to think that it's going to change. I don't really see that happening this week. They've been complete junk so far this year, so Kevin Harvick, probably a guy I'm going to be pretty low on for the most part. Then Ryan Blinny at $9,100. He's starting in 7th. Normally, I'd be all about Ryan Blinny at this really cheap price point. But man, he is just not good at Richmond. Now, the one thing that might be potentially good for him is that this race is typically at night, and now it's going to be in the middle of the day, so maybe that should help him out a little bit. But the Penske cars are typically pretty darn good at Richmond, or just short flat tracks in general. It's just Ryan Blaney, he's pretty bad here. Average finish of 20.2, running position of 17.3, so it's not like his finishes are just getting unlucky. He's kind of running around where he's going to finish. His drive rating of 66.8, which is absolutely horrendous. 0 top 10s, 0 top 15s, and 4 top 20s with obviously no laps led or anything like that. And the recent finishes at Richmond, 19th, 17th, 25th, 19th, and 22nd. And as you can see, at these track types, he's really good. One of the best drivers in the entire field. It's just Richmond specifically is a terrible track for him. So Ryan Blaney, he's probably going to have a good race here at some point, but I'm not really sure I'm willing to bank on that in my lineups this weekend. So I'll have a little bit of Ryan Blaney, but nothing too spectacular. Dropping down to this 8K range, this is a loaded price range. There's a lot of good plays here, but we'll start up top with Alex Bowman, 80, 100 bucks. He's starting in 24th. Richmond isn't his greatest track, but he did have a good run last year. He finished in 9th place, and the Hendrick cars have been super fast this year, and starting back in 24th, I think Alex Bowman's got legit top 10 upside here, and he showed it last year, and I think that's only going to improve this season. So for 80, 100 bucks, a guy that should be able to pick up some fast laps and be a top 5, top 10 contender, I'll take that all day starting all the way back in 24. So I'm a big fan of Alex Bowman this week. Should have a decent chunk of him in my lineups. Austin Cindric, $8,600. He's back for another week, so he's going to be starting in the rear of the field. And that does make him a relatively safe play. The problem is, it's kind of hard to click on his name over guys like Alex Bowman, William Byron, Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, and MDB in the same price range because, yes, he's in a Penske car, and the Penske cars do perform pretty well here at these short, flat tracks. And I think Austin Cindric should probably have a better run than he did at Atlanta, but I still feel like he's going to be maxed around a 20th place finish. I think Vegas has him in like 23rd or 24th, which is fine. It can get him close to 40 points. It's just he kind of lacks that top end upside a guy like Alex Bowman or William Byron has that can pick up a ton of fast laps and finish inside the top 5 or top 10. So I think Austin Cindric as a relatively safe play. I'd imagine a lot of people are going to go there in cash games, and I totally understand that, but I would not hate being underweight in tournaments to get more exposure to guys like Byron, Alex Bowman, and some other guys in that price range as well. So relatively safe play, just kind of lacks overall ceiling. And then William Byron, 8,500 bucks. He's starting in 4th. Not the greatest track in the world for him. Did finish 21st here last year. Has no top 10 finishes, no top 5s, only 2 top 15s, no laps led, and barely any fast laps. But I'm willing to bank on some William Byron this week in tournaments because he's been a top 10 machine all season long. He typically has a fast car every single week. These Hendrick Motorsports cars, which I've mentioned so many times so far, so I sound like a broken record, but they have a ton of speed this season. I think William Byron can be the guy that hangs around the top 5, top 6, maybe top 8, picks up some fast laps, and maybe he doesn't get out there and dominate, but if he can get a decent chunk of fast laps and get a strong finish, that's not that bad at 8,500 bucks because he can be a guy that picks up a lot of finishing position points along the way. So I don't mind Byron in tournaments whatsoever. Obviously not going to go there in cash games starting all the way up at 4th, but you can certainly target him in GPPs. Kurt Busch, 8,300 bucks. He's starting in 17th. It's a pretty solid track for him. He has an average running position inside the top 10, average finish of 12.7, has a top 5 finish, and he's finished inside the top 20 each and every single time the past 3 seasons. And starting in 17th, he doesn't look like an absolutely elite place differential play because he's not, because he's starting in the mid-teens. But I think that might keep his ownership maybe a little bit low, and he's a guy with top 10 upside every single time we're here at Richmond. So Kurt Busch is definitely a guy I want some exposure to, especially at that lower price point of $8,300. Eric Almirola, 8,200 bucks. He's starting back in 22nd. This is a pretty good track for him, but like I said earlier with Kevin Harvick, it's really hard to trust these Stewart-Haas racing cars right now because they just have no speed. They're not getting any finishes, and I feel like every single time they're showing the running order, these Stewart-Haas cars, or like the announcers will say something, either Gordon or Clint Boyer, that the Stewart-Haas racing cars are struggling once again, and it sounds like a broken record on TV, but that's just what it is these days. They just kind of suck right now. They're definitely the worst team of the big dogs right now, and I'm not sure when that's going to change. Eventually, they're going to start catching up, but I'm not sure it's going to be anytime soon. It might take until the mid-portion of the season, but Eric Almirola starting in 22nd, 8,200 bucks. Yeah, he's worth playing because he does have top 10 upside here. Looking at his recent finishes, he finished 8th here last year's race, which the Stewart-Haas cars were a lot stronger last year, so I don't want to put too much into that, but 16th, 23rd, 5th, and 17th. He's pretty strong at the short flat tracks as well, typically a top 15, top 10 contender, so while I think he's in play, there's definitely concern because of the equipment of Stewart-Haas Racing that has really struggled so far to start the season. Then Matt DiBenedetto, 8,000 bucks. He's starting in 16th, so I think this puts him as a tournament play more so than anything. Not sure I'd get there in cash games, but the Penske cars, which I know he's not technically a Penske car, but Wood Brothers Racing is an extension of Penske for the most part. They typically run pretty well at these short, flat tracks. I know I've said that 80 times so far, so I'm probably sounding annoying at this point, but MDB should be a guy that could contend for a top 15, top 12 finish if you're looking at his numbers the past couple of seasons at these track types. He's got 7 top 15s, 4 top 10s, average finish of 10.9. I think he's firmly in play for tournaments. I know his numbers at Richmond don't look super impressive, but the majority of these races came in junk equipment, and that's not the case these days. So I don't mind MDB in tournaments. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have a pretty strong tournament play here, and Christopher Bell at $7,800 starting in 8th. He's been pretty good at the short flat track so far this year. It's only a 2-race sample size, but he's finished inside the top 10 each time, and he's in great equipment now. And Joe Gibbs Racing in the 20 car. Eric Jones is pretty good in this car in previous seasons with an average finish of 11.7, a top 5, 2 top 10s, and 5 top 15s. And I think Christopher Bell can do just that, maybe even a little bit better as well. He's a very talented driver, so the price point makes it fine. Even if he loses a position or two, he could still be a top 10 guy. But there's legit top 8, top 5 upside here for Christopher Bell. Pick up some fast laps along the way, so I like that price point quite a bit. Wish he was starting a little bit further back, but I guess I can't get too picky here. I do think he's just a fine tournament play for the most part, especially in that 20 car. Then Eric Jones, $7,600 starting in 30th. We just talked about him a little bit. Unfortunately, he is no longer in the 20 car. He is now in the 43 car for RPM, which is definitely a big downgrade in equipment. But this was a pretty good track for him in the past, so I think obviously he's not going to put up these kind of numbers. That's just going to be impossible in the 43 car. So let's see how Bubba Wallace did in recent seasons at Richmond. And if you want to look at his numbers, Bubba's finished 26th, 12th, 27th, 27th, and 25th. So there's just some pretty pedestrian numbers for the most part. I think Eric Jones can be a top 20, top 25 contender, which is fine starting 30th. There's certainly upside there, and I think Eric Jones is a better driver than Bubba Wallace. I certainly think Eric Jones will be putting up better numbers than Bubba Wallace is in the 23 car, but that's neither here or there. But I think Eric Jones is a fine play. He could pick up around 10 spots in this race, $7,600. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but he's in play for cash games if you're just looking for a nice floor, because I can't imagine he's going to lose any spots here unless he happens to wreck out. Austin Dillon, $7,500. He's starting in 11th. He's certainly a nice tournament play here, because if you guys remember last year's race, I was just rewatching it the past week. Austin Dillon had one of the best cars in the entire field in last year's Richmond race. He actually overtook Kevin Harvick in stage 1, was leading laps, getting all the fast laps, and then he had a penalty, ended up working his way back through the field. I think he got back up front again, if I remember correctly, but he was in the top 3, and he finished 4th in that race, and he had an overall dominant car, not something we'd really expect from Austin Dillon. We can get good finishes from Austin Dillon, but he was legitimately putting up dominator points. He was absolutely crushing, and this is not a bad track for him. He's got 3 top 10 finishes here, 4 top 15s. Like I said, he finished 4th here last year, and finished 22nd in the 2019 fall race, but then 6th and 6th place in 2019 spring race and the 2018 fall race. So Austin Dillon, I can definitely get behind using him in tournaments this week. I'm not afraid of him starting in 11th. I know that's pretty high up, but this is I think he can easily contend for a top 10 finish here, maybe even a top 8 finish. So I can definitely get behind Austin Dillon at that price point. Bubba Wallace, $7,300. He's starting 15th. He does not have a good track record here at Richmond. He's obviously in better equipment now. He's kind of that 5th Joe Gibbs car, but he just hasn't been that great this year. I think he could contend for a top 15. The price is fine, so he's an okay tournament play. But I'm not super excited about Bubba Wallace here, but he was viable last week. I think he actually made the optimal lineup, but not a big fan of Bubba starting in 15th. I'd rather play Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, Christopher Bell around that price point, but I'll probably get a little bit of exposure to Bubba Wallace just in case he happens to have a little bit of a breakout race. Tyler Reddick, $7,200. He's starting in 13th. He finished 11th here last year, so I think he's a fine tournament play. Had 4 fast laps in that race as well. Not that it's super important or anything big, but I think Tyler Reddick's a guy that should be a top 15 contender. And pretty much all this 7K range is a bunch of tournament plays. Maybe besides Eric Jones, he's like the cash play here, although I'm not really sure you have to play Eric Jones in nearly $8,000 in cash games. But Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, even Ryan Newman, Christopher Bell, all these guys check in as good tournament plays, so it's just kind of what all these guys are for the most part. Tyler Reddick, if you want to look at his numbers since 2020, which is really the only thing we have to look at since he was a rookie last year, at these short flat tracks, he had 2 top 10 finishes, 3 top 15s, and 5 top 20s. So not super impressive numbers, but I'm not excited about him, but I'll probably have a little bit of Tyler Reddick just in case he happens to hang around that top 10. Then Ryan Newman, $7,000. He's starting back in 19th. The Roush Fenway cars have looked pretty solid so far to start the year. They're getting actually some surprising finishes. So I can get a little bit excited about Ryan Newman here starting back in 19th because Richmond is a pretty good track for him. Last year, he finished 23rd, which wasn't great, but he has an average running position of 14.5 here, 3 top 10s and 4 top 20s. And if you want to look at the recent finishes specifically, he's finished 23rd, like I mentioned earlier, then 5th, 9th, 15th, and he had an issue in the 2018 spring race, finishing 37th, which will skew those numbers a little bit. But I can definitely get behind some Ryan Newman at $7,000. Do think he's a pretty strong tournament play. And definitely a fringe cash play there. And then going down to the 6K range, we have Cole Custer at $6,800. He's starting 21st. I want to like him at this price point. I like the starting position. It's just I cannot trust these Stewart-Haas racing cars. I mean, they're just not showing us speed any weeks. I think Custer can be a top 20 guy. I like the price point. He finished 14th here last year, but their cars have definitely taken a step back this season. So that's something to be a little bit careful about with Cole Custer. If you want to look at his numbers since 2020, which is the only thing we have to look at these track types, a little bit too far there. He's got an average running position inside the top 20, average finish inside the top 20, 2 top 10s, 4 top 15. So they haven't been a bad track type for him. It's just really hard to trust these Stewart-Haas cars so far this season. So I would tread lightly with Cole Custer. Daniel Suarez, $6,600. He's starting in 27th. And I like Daniel Suarez quite a bit at $6,600, starting all the way back there. He's pretty much the third RCR car, and these RCR cars didn't run too bad last year at Richmond. I mean, obviously Austin Dillon, one of the best cars in the field. Tyler Reddick was a top 15 guy, and Daniel Suarez has shown some speed this year. He's no longer in the lawnmower these days. Things have changed for Daniel Suarez, and in the past, when he was in good equipment, he's not quite like in Joe Gibbs or Stewart-Haas equipment like he used to be in, but this is not a bad ride. He could be a top 15, top 20 guy easily in this race. So I have some high hopes here for Daniel Suarez, and my projections like him quite a bit. I'm getting him a lot in my lineup, especially down low as a cheap driver. He has 3 top 10s here in the past. Now, obviously, recent years, like last year, he finished 29th, but he was in the 96 car, which is absolutely horrendous. So we can't really look at previous numbers for Daniel Suarez because circumstances have changed so far, but he was fine at Phoenix. And obviously, Martinsville last week, his car went into flames, but there was the big wreck, and that was just a bit of a chaotic race for the most part. So I'm not going to put too much into that. So Daniel Suarez showing in 27th. I mean, there's upside to gain like 10 spots in this race, if not more, if they happen to hit their setup once again. So I like Daniel Suarez quite a bit. Chase Briscoe, $6,400, starting back in 26. Again, same thing I've been saying for the Stewart-Haas cars. They're all starting in pretty good spots, and their price points are low, but it's for a reason. They've sucked so far this year, and they're just really hard to trust. And Chase Briscoe has not had a great rookie season so far at all. He's been horrendous for the most part. So while this does look like a pretty appealing play at starting in 26 at this price point, not really sure how much of him I'll have, because I want to say, like, I almost want to play Ricky Stenhouse Jr. over Chase Briscoe this week, because for Ricky Stenhouse, he's getting top 20 finishes every single week. Meanwhile, Chase Briscoe, I mean, we're getting lucky for top 25s these days, it feels like. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'll have to check his actual finishes every single race, but man, these Stewart-Haas cars have been absolutely horrendous, and like I said, they're going to have to show me that it's going to change before I actually hop on. Now, I'd want to be ahead of the curve here, but also want to keep blowing money on these guys, hoping they're good every single week. So you just got to be careful with Chase Briscoe. I mean, like I said, the price and starting position looks good. He's in good. He should be in good equipment. It's just so far this year hasn't really been the case. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I kind of hit on him already. He's starting a little bit too far up for me to like him a ton, but Richmond's not a bad track for him. He's typically in the top 20 here. He's got 5 top 20 finishes and 1 top 15 the past 6 races. Looking at his recent finishes here, 18th, 15th, 16th, 13th, and then 23rd all the way back in 2018. And the way he's been running this year looked pretty darn good. So I wouldn't be surprised if he could get another top 15 finish. And even if he loses a spot or two, that's not bad at his price point. There's good finishing position points available for him. So I can definitely get behind some Ricky Stenhouse Jr. this week. Chris Buescher, $6,100. He's starting in 12th. This is a bad track for Chris Buescher. Average finish of 27.7 here, running position of 26. And looking at his recent finishes, 24th, 31st, 22nd, 30th, and 26th. He's starting pretty far up to the front as well. So I'd rather place Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Can't imagine he'll have much Chris Buescher whatsoever. It's just a really bad track for him. I know he's been fine so far this season, but it's just starting 12th. It's going to be a really risky play in my opinion. Rosh Chastain, $6,000. He's starting in 18th. He's in a decent car in the 42 car. It's just he's a bit of an aggressive driver. It can get into some trouble. So I'm not going to look at these numbers because he used to be an absolute trash equipment. So these numbers mean nothing to me. Obviously, he's going to have some really awful numbers. I think he could be a top 20-ish guy. His Vegas odds aren't look too promising for this race. But just for the price point, I think he's viable. But I can't imagine I'm going to have too much Rosh Chastain. But at least he has some top 20 upside, which a lot of these guys down low do not have. Then down to the 5K range, only a couple guys I like down here, but Michael Mcdowell, 5,800 bucks. He's finally starting in the 20s, so it does make him viable. It's just hard to pick on his name when he's starting in the teens because he just doesn't typically finish up there. I know he had a hot start to the season, but anyway, Michael Mcdowell, this is not a good track for him. He's got an average finish of 25.7, running position of 26.1. The price and starting position makes him playable, but I feel like he's going to finish right around where he starts, if not lose a couple spots. His finishes here have been 25th, 21st, 36th, 24th, and 31st. He's had a good start to the season, so I think he could probably contend for a top 20. So I'm just going to kind of mix and match these guys for the most part down low because I don't have a strong lean towards any of them. Corey LaJoie, 5,700 bucks, starting all the way back in 36. I imagine he's going to be the most popular down here. And he was having a fantastic race last week until he got screwed on pit road where I think the front end got destroyed in his radiator. Obviously, you can't fix that. But I think he was in 12th place before that happened. So if you had Corey LaJoie, it was the right move. You just got screwed on pit road, which sucks. I know. I mean, you can't really control that. But Corey LaJoie starting in 36. I mean, do you really think he's going to lose a spot to Garrett Smithley? I mean, he should be able to pass guys like Justin Haley, BJ McLeod, Cody Ware, Quinn Houff, Josh Bilicki, and James Davison. Should be a top 25, top 30 contender. So 5,700 bucks starting 36. Yeah, he's going to be a very viable play down low. Imagine he will be the chalk. Ryan Preece, 5,600 bucks. He's starting in 25th. He's a guy that possesses top 20, top 25 upside. Did finish 20th in this race last year. He's got 2 top 20 finishes at Richmond. If you want to look at the short flat track numbers for him last year and this year combined, he has 4 top 20 finishes with an average finish of 24.4 and a running position of 24th. And I think that's skewed a little bit because he's had a lot of wrecks last year. I forget exactly what tracks those were at. So it might be skewing the numbers a little bit, but Ryan Preece is a fine option for the price point. Anthony Alfredo, 5,400 bucks. That guy just sucks, man. And I think you kind of have to respect what John Hunter Nemechek did last season in that car because Anthony Alfredo is just putting up terrible, terrible numbers every single week. He's not even running well either. Like, yeah, sometimes he wrecks, so it's going to make him look like he had a terrible finish, but he's not running well either. Like, he's running bad, and sometimes he's getting caught up in wrecks too. At least John Hunter Nemechek would run well and then get caught up in wrecks and spin out. Anthony Alfredo's not doing either. Well, he's not doing the first part where he's running well, then wrecks. He's just running bad, and then bad things happen to him as the day goes on. So, yeah, starting 29th, he's viable, but I don't really want to play too much because he's been a real hard guy to trust. Then after that, I just can't play these guys. Smithley, Haley, and McLeod. I already mentioned all the names earlier. I just can't play them. I know one of these guys were optimal last race, which I believe was either Josh Bilicki or James Davison, but you got to keep in mind, there was a random big wreck. There was a random big one at Martinsville, which we don't typically see, which took out a lot of good cars, and then these back guys obviously avoided that wreck, and then they moved up and secured their spots at those low 4K, low 5K price points, which did make them optimal to fit in a couple dominators and some nice mid-range plays as well. But outside of another huge wreck happening, which is not something we typically see at Richmond, I don't think these guys are going to be optimal. But with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for the video. And if you made it all the way through, please let me know. I do appreciate the people that do watch the entire video. Some of you say you even watch it twice, and you guys are the real troopers out there. So I do appreciate it, but that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and if you want to try out the optimizer, ownership projections, and all the extra stuff that I offer over on Patreon, and join the Discord community as well. Link is down below for that. Follow me over on social media, Pennell16 on Twitter, cpen16 over on IG, and I think that's it for the plugs to end the video. So I'm going to get out of here. Join the DraftKings contest by commenting your DK username down below, but I think that's officially it for the rambling. See you in the next race, and I'll see you guys on the live stream on Sunday.